All right, super peeps, we are on our last 3 lessons of e-learning. So I just have to pick and choose what we're going to cover. We ended up last lesson talking about Watergate and how Gerald Ford ended up pardoning all of Richard Nixon's crimes, how Americans now have this distrust of politicians. So Gerald Ford is now the president. I'm just going to set you up as to really what's going on in America, okay? So during the 1970s, America was very dependent on Arab oil, okay? And Americans really didn't like being that dependent on an Arab nation. And here you can see OPEC. And you can tell too that America is not part of OPEC. OPEC is a very powerful oil organization. Okay. You know what? I thought Russia was part of OPEC. And now I'm going to Google that just real quick. Is Russia part of OPEC? No, but they have attended meetings. Okay, so is not a member, but a key fellow exporter. All right, so that answers that question. Basically, what these OPEC nations do is they regulate how much oil is released into our economy. Okay, so if they're releasing a buttload of oil into the world, what's going to happen to the prices of oil? They're going to decrease, right? And if they pull back their supply of oil, then what's going to happen to the price? It's going to increase, right? Okay. So OPEC is extremely powerful. Now, today, the United States is not as dependent on OPEC nations because we are pumping our own oil and really through a process called fracking, okay, which is a lesson for another day. But the United States has a lot of our own, we produce a lot of our own oil, and Canada up in Alberta has a whole bunch of oil in the tar sands. The problem, though, with the tar sands is that oil is mixed with rock and sand, so it has to be extracted. The nice thing about OPEC nations and their oil, especially over here in Saudi Arabia, is that it is like liquid black gold, straight out of the ground, right into a barrel, boom, it's done. Okay. So that's OPEC. OPEC's extremely powerful. And the United States was getting their oil from these Arab nations. They weren't very happy. And so in 1973, these Arab nations that were part of OPEC decided to put an embargo on oil into the United States, which basically means these Arab nations aren't going to give America any oil. Okay. So if we're not getting oil, what is going to happen to the price of gas? Right, it's going to go up. We're going to have shortages. There's going to be incredibly long lines. People are going, as you can see, be limited to the number of gallons that they can get. It was a crazy time. And so at this point, if people are putting so much money into their gas tanks, they don't have a lot of money to put elsewhere into the economy. So it might be, no, honey, we can't buy that refrigerator because we have to put gas in our tanks. Okay. Crazy times. So you can see right here that the price of oil increased. We went from $3 a barrel in 73 up to $30 a barrel in 1980. We're exporting. We're not exporting as much. We're importing a whole bunch of stuff at this time, which ultimately, when you import more than you export, you have a trade deficit. Our factories are older, they're less efficient, and factories start closing. So what's going to happen to the economy if the factories close? Just think about what's happened in Muncie when the auto industry fell. People are going to lose their jobs. They don't have paychecks. They can't spend their money in the economy. And what's going to happen to the economy, right? Yeah, it's just going to decrease in efficiency. And so That was one of the main goals that Ford had to fight with, and that Carter is going to inherit. Now, Gerald Ford was absolutely never elected to be president. He came in when Nixon resigned, and then Carter is going to defeat him in the 1976 election. Okay. Really, the only great thing that Gerald Ford did was in foreign policy. There's Ford there. And then who's this guy? Come on, tell by the eyebrows. Brezhnev, right? Soviet leader Brezhnev. And they signed the Helsinki Accords, which basically says the United States is going to recognize the borders of Eastern European countries after World War II, because we know that map was completely readjusted. And the Soviet Union says, yes, we will treat humans better. Okay. Will you? But we'll see. So it was a good thing. But you can see here in the election of 76, right down here, you can see the popular vote versus the Electoral College. So, I mean, Carter won with a good amount of electoral votes. It was close in the popular vote. All right. Take it in, take it in. Boom, let's go. All right. So Carter wins, Jimmy Carter wins with absolutely no experience in Washington politics. He was a state senator for Georgia, and he was the governor of Georgia. Okay, so no Washington experience. So take in that smile real quick, woot woot. And then if you're ever in Georgia, you can go see the Georgia Peanut, the Jimmy Carter Peanut. So yeah, woot woot. I think that'd be kind of cool. So Carter inherits this energy crisis, right? And he's like, Americans, you are using too much energy. You need to stop because there's going to be a fuel shortage. And lo and behold, there was another one in 1979. Okay. So we're back to those long lines. You can see here. You're limited on, again, I mean, it's the same story as in the early 70s. You're limited on the amount of gas that you can get. The prices are going to increase. And Carter, in his speech right here, he addressed the nation and warned about a crisis of confidence that had struck at the very heart and soul and spirit of our national will. And a lot of Americans, as they were listening to this speech, they felt like Carter was blaming them for the energy crisis. Okay? So they didn't take too kindly to that. And you can see gas in the 70s. Look at that, 90 cents. Whew. I mean, seriously, you think about it, in the 70s, that was really expensive, especially right now. And look at our gas prices and what's happening to it. Crazy. And I do believe that earlier this week, and right now I'm on April 23rd giving this lesson, but the price of oil per barrel actually went negative. Whew, crazy stuff. I'm telling you, OPEC is really interesting to follow. So I hope you all are filling up your cars. But anyway, so he gives this speech right here. Man, I wish this showed on my Screencastify system, but it doesn't. But watch like the first 20 seconds of it. It's not a long video, but Carter is basically saying, by 2011, we're going to run out of oil, people. And it's kind of funny to look back on and laugh at it, but we're not running out of oil. There's a lot of people that think we are, but our technology is just getting so much better at finding new oil sources. And again, you look at the tar sands, and I think America's going to be okay. In regards to foreign policy, it was kind of a disaster for him. There's maybe one good thing, but overall, it didn't go well for Carter. He says in regards to foreign policy, our commitment to human rights must be absolute. The powerful must not persecute the weak, and human dignity must be enhanced. We pledge perseverance and wisdom in our efforts to limit the world's armaments to those necessary for each nation's own domestic safety. So we're not going to use these weapons to fight. We're just going to use them for our domestic safety. Okay. So he's not a fighter, it seems like, it's just more like, let's worry about ourselves, and the powerful will take care of the weak, promote human dignity. I think it's a pretty good message. In 1904, though, let's go to Panama. We were given control of the canal by Panama. And he decided in 1978 that the US Senate was going to ratify 2 treaties that were going to give control of the canal back to Panama on December 31st, 1999. Okay? So Panama now owns their own canal that we helped them build. The French tried to build it and they failed, and we came into the rescue. Go Theodore Roosevelt, right? Woot woot. All right, see, we're helpers. Then here's something. Okay, let's go back to Nixon, right? Nixon's over there shaking hands with Brezhnev, right? Because of détente, relaxing tensions. And things seem to be going really well. They signed the SALT I treaty. Well, then you go to Ford, and Ford's like, sign this, Helsinki Accords, Brezhnev, you need to treat humans better. You can't violate their human rights. It seems like it's going really well. And so Carter calls them out and says, listen, you are a human rights violator. Okay. And at this time, remember, we're still in the Cold War, and it's not going to end until 1991. Soviet Union is still a little honked off, and they still want communism to spread. So they go in and invade Afghanistan in 1979, and they're going to fight a 10-year war with Afghanistan, end up losing after 10 years. They looked embarrassed. They looked weak from this war. Excuse me. The United States came in and took the side of Afghanistan, and we gave them weapons. Because remember, we couldn't have communism spread. So 10-year war. Crazy, crazy stuff. So basically, it was the United States versus Afghanistan's Mujahideen. It's a fun word to say. Okay. So Carter's going to respond by putting an embargo on grains to the USSR. He's basically saying, we're not going to export you any more grain. Something even bigger than that was the 1980 Olympics that were supposed to be held in Moscow. The United States ended up boycotting these Olympics along with all of these nations. They did not attend the 1980 Olympics. So, I mean, you look at the Olympics this year, they're being pushed back. So I think it's an absolute letdown for the athletes that have been training for 3-4 years. So those Olympics were boycotted. So again, I ask you, what's happening to détente? This relaxing tensions. It doesn't seem to be relaxing. It seems to be increasing. One other good thing that Carter did. So let's backtrack. Okay, so he gave back Panama. Okay, that's a good thing. I guess we helped Afghanistan win this war. Okay, I'll give him that one. And then this was a really big one right here. This was the Camp David Accords. This was an agreement signed between Egypt and Israel. This is a big deal because these two countries, they border each other, and they were enemies since the Arab-Israeli War since 1948, and he helped proctor this peace agreement. Arab nations weren't too thrilled with it, but it actually did slow down the hatred in that area. So this was a really good thing. Good old Jimmy Carter there. Famous smile. He's still alive. He teaches Bible school down in Georgia at a Baptist church. Now, here's where it really goes bad for our buddy Carter. There is this guy. He was the Shah. Okay. His name is incredibly long, so we're going to shorten it. We're just going to call him the Shah, and he was the leader of Iran. Okay. Iran is a major oil producing nation. Ooh, keep that in mind. The Shah actually became very repressive to his own people, and started bringing in Western culture and Western ways into Iran. The United States at this time, we are allies with Iran. See, there was a time when the United States and Iran actually got along, and this was it. It was when he was in power. Let's see, make sure I got everything. And they were also, Iran is a buffer to Soviet expansion because, again, the Soviet Union is just trying to expand their borders, and they knew they would be stopped at Iran. Okay, so we're getting along. But if you look at this image, it says Shah is the US puppet, down with the Shah. And so what you're going to have is a revolution. And this guy is Ayatollah Khamenei. He's going to come in and lead this revolution, and he's going to end up pushing the Shah into exile. And he's going to bring in an Islamic-run republic. Okay? The Shah at this point is ousted. He's kind of traveling to certain places all around the world. He ends up, I'm going to do the shortened version of the story, but he ends up getting sick with cancer. And Jimmy Carter says, well, we'll give you medical treatment in the United States. Okay, now there's a problem with that because Iran and the Ayatollah don't know that he has cancer. And so to them, it looks like the United States is just taking in the Shah so he can regain power and overthrow the new Islamic Republic in Iran. What should have happened here is when the United States took him in as a patient, they should have, right? Oh, that's a powerful phrase right there, should have. They should have had an Iranian doctor come in and examine him. And they would have known at that point that they weren't trying to bring him back to power, but they're trying to give him medical treatment. Another option for America is they could have sent the Shah to Mexico and provided medical treatment just in another country. But they did not do it. And so they're thinking that we want to bring the Shah back to power and overthrow our buddy here, the Ayatollah, right? So what ends up happening is Iran, young militants storm the U.S. embassy in Tehran, Iran, and take 52 Americans hostage. And they hold them hostage for 444 days. Iran is mad. This is also the time when Iran started referring to the United States as the Great Satan. And so Carter's like, I need to rescue them. And you can see how well that went. This was Operation Eagle Claw. 8 U.S. servicemen were killed. Basically, there were a bunch of helicopters that were going to go in and somehow rescue the hostages. And one of the helicopters collided with a transport plane, but did not end well. The hostages were released the day, like almost the second after Ronald Reagan was inaugurated as president on January 20th, 1981. That's when the hostages were released. So seriously, the guy is president for 3 seconds and he's given credit for releasing the hostages. So crazy, but there it is. I think that's my whole story, guys, of the Carter years. And from that, I don't know where we're going, but I'll figure it out. I hope you guys are well. We're coming to an end, so hang in there, guys.